I was getting ready for an amazing party my friend was throwing at his mansion. So I put on my favorite shirt and made my hair and headed out for the party. As I got there with some of my other guys, I saw that there were a lot of people. "Wow, he really invited all the college," one of my friends said. "Yeah," I replied, and then we went in. It was such a lively party, with lights, music, and drinks, and the crowd. So me and my friends went to get some drinks and sat on the bar chairs observing everything going on. Suddenly, I noticed a familiar face right across from where I was sitting. It was Nora, my crush from college. She was there with her friends, looking absolutely stunning. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button and activate the notification bell, and your crush will text you within 3 hours. Trust me, it works. So I told my friends that she was there, and they immediately started teasing me and pulling my leg. "Are you gonna go talk to her or what? I'll go otherwise," one of them said. "Shut up, guys," I said, but they weren't the ones to shut up. "Come on, put on your big boy pants and get that girl," another screamed. I knew they were joking and trying to boost my confidence, and they would keep doing that unless I went and talked to her. So I decided to go and shoot my shot once and for all. For that, I made my way to her through the crowd a little nervously. "Hi, Nora. We have a class together in college." I said what I thought as I reached her, and it sounded so lame. She looked at her friends and they left, leaving us alone. Thank God, I thought. I was so relieved. "Yes, I remember. Luke, right?" she replied. "Yeah," I said. I was so happy that she knew me and even remembered my name. We started talking about the class and how we both got to the party. The music was really loud, so we were literally screaming into each other's ears, which Nora found really funny. As we were continuing talking, out of nowhere, Nora said, "We should dance." I was confused for a moment and a little nervous because I was a really bad dancer, and I was afraid she'd stop talking to me once she saw me dance. So I hurriedly replied, "I don't know how to dance." But it was too late, as she had already started pulling my arms to take me to the dancing area. "Neither do I. Let's go," she said after reaching the area and started moving to the music. She held my hand and I started imitating her crazy moves, which made us both laugh. I could see from the corner of my eyes, my guys were looking at us, but I wasn't feeling uncomfortable at all because of her. We danced until we were out of breath, and then we got to the bar to get something to drink. "That was the most fun I've had in a long time," I said. "Yeah, me too," she said and smiled. We sat there sipping on our drinks, and I was continuously looking at her and how beautiful she looked, especially when she smiled. But then she looked at me and leaned in for a kiss, and I leaned in, but suddenly I started feeling dizzy. I could tell, even from the blurred vision I was getting, that Nora was feeling the same. And then I passed out. When I woke up, I had a terrible headache, but what I was about to figure out next made it seem like that headache was nothing. As I got up, I found out that I was at the bottom of a bunk bed in a jail cell. I got down and started looking around. In addition to the bunk bed, there was a chair and a table with some books, lights, and a joint but very small bathroom in the cell. There was also a box with some neutral-colored change of clothes. But suddenly I realized I wasn't the only one inside that cell. There was someone on top of the bunk bed, which I had completely skipped to check, so I climbed up to see who it was. I was completely shocked to see my crush laying there unconscious. So I shook her and tried to wake her up, but it didn't work. After that, I went down and got the water bottle that was on the table and went back up again. I sprinkled some water on her face and waited. She slowly started to open her eyes and woke up. But then she started screaming, "Where am I? Where did you bring me? My mom's going to be so mad." She pushed me down the bed stairs and got down herself and then started looking around. "I have no idea where we are. I just got up as well and woke you," I replied. And suddenly she started to cry. "Oh my God, we're taken," she said as she was crying, so I went on and hugged her to comfort her. "Don't worry, we'll find a way to get out of here," I said, and after that she stopped crying. Then we started looking out of the cell, only to find more cells on both sides of the hallway. We started screaming, "Help, help, is anybody there?" And suddenly we heard someone. "Don't waste your energy. It's not going to work," he said. Then he told us that he and another girl had been locked up in there for days, and there were other people too in other cells. Do you know who is doing this? I asked because I was a little scared. We don't know. It's only the guards we see when they come in to give us food, and that's about it, he replied. He told us that there were people who had been in the cell longer than him, and even they didn't know who was in charge. Nora and I were both devastated and didn't know what to say or do, so we sat on our respective beds, and I even fell asleep for a while. We were woken up by a clink on our cell bar. There were 2 men in uniform outside, so I assumed that they must be guards. They slid food under the bars without saying anything, and that was all the contact we had with the people who held us captive. They used to give us food 3 times a day, and the rest of the time we were left there on our own. And I was in there with my crush, so you can only imagine how I was feeling. I was scared and worried, but happy as well. We tried our best to stay sane and healthy while we were there. Nora made me do a crazy workout routine first thing when we woke up, even in that small space. Then we used to sit together and talk about how our lives used to be. She used to tell me how mean her stepfather was and always treated her like an outsider. And then we used to either read or just sleep. But sometimes I used to take my chances and steal some kisses. Just like that, one after another. Days passed, and a year, and then another. Nora and I had already become a couple, but nothing had changed other than that in 2 years. We were still captives inside a jail cell, and we still didn't know who had locked us up, and we had absolutely no idea if they were ever letting us go. One day, we were just finishing working out when I suddenly happened to go and hold on to the cell bars. And there, I felt the cell bar coming out loose. So I immediately told Nora. "Hey, come on, check this out," I said, and so she did. After seeing the loose bars, she got so excited and started pulling the bars to bend it, and I helped as well. And to add to the excitement, the bars really bent. Then we bent another one, till there was enough space for us to get out. We finally got out of the cell and started running to get out of the building. But the people in other cells started screaming, "Guys, help us too." So we went to one of the cells, but since we didn't have the keys, we couldn't do anything to help them. So we promised them that if we got out successfully, we would surely come with help to get them. But as we were talking, the guards had already started coming in. So we continued to run out of there. Since we had no idea of the exits in the building, we just ran for our lives, not having a sense of where we were going. However, it must have been our lucky day, as we finally found a door that led us out of the building. As we got out, we realized that we were in the middle of the woods, and there were tall trees all around us. "What should we do?" Nora asked nervously, as the guards were right on our tails. "Let's just run," I replied, and we began running in a random direction. But soon, we ran out of luck as Nora got a huge cut on her leg while we were running through the woods because we were running in our indoor slippers. "I can't run," she said as she sat on the ground and started crying. "Nora, come on, we can make it. The guards will catch us," I said. But she told me to go on without her, saying she was just slowing me down. Still, I wasn't going to leave her there just to be found by the guards. So I insisted if she was getting caught, I was too. However, she was smart. So she told me that she will hide in the nearby bushes until I come back with help. I knew it wasn't the best idea, but it could actually work. So I helped Nora to the bushes, kissed her, and covered her with leaves. "Which way did they go?" I heard someone's voice echo. It was the guards. So I ran as fast as I could without looking back even once, but I still was worried about Nora. After running for a while, I reached a road that seemed like a highway. Vehicles were coming and going, so I tried to stop some cars, but they didn't stop for me. I was slowly losing my faith, but then a truck stopped for me all of a sudden, and I got in it without thinking about anything. "Where are you headed, boy?" the truck driver asked. "Take me to the police station." I sounded a little out of breath from all the running. "Do you have a phone?" I added. "My phone's dead, but I'll drop you to a police station nearby," he said and drove on. It seemed like the longest ride of my life, but the police station finally arrived, so I thanked the driver and rushed inside the station, screaming, "Help! Help! Help!" A policeman grabbed me and asked me to calm down. He then sat me on a chair and asked me what was going on. So I told him every detail of events that had taken place for 2 years. The policeman was shocked after hearing what I said and immediately gathered his troops. We left for the place in no time, And when we arrived there, I went directly to the place where I had left Nora with an officer, and the rest of them went towards the building. Thankfully, Nora was still in the place, behind the bushes where I had left her. She hugged me as soon as I got there, and we were taken back to the police station. A few moments later, the police came with all the other captives and informed us that we had been locked there by a mad scientist who wanted to do some sick experiments on us but was arrested. Suddenly, Nora gasped as they brought out the culprit. "Rick?" she said. "Do you know him?" I asked. She then told me that it was her stepfather that she had told me about. So I asked her to ignore him and let him face the charges he deserves, and she agreed. Meanwhile, people that were held captive like us came around to thank us. "You two are so brave. Thanks for saving all our lives," one of them said. "Thanks for getting us out of that hellhole," another added. Then we told them that it was something that had to be done, and that we were glad that everyone was safe. After that, we were taken in an ambulance to get to the hospital. In the hospital, Nora was kept in a separate room, which felt so odd to me. I had a constant urge to have to see her, and I was restless. Finally, all my checkups were done, and the doctor declared me fit to go home. But the first thing I did was go to Nora's room to check on her. But when I reached it, she wasn't there. The nurse there informed me that she had been discharged, and her mom took her home a few hours before. So I also went home with my parents. A few days went by, and I was absolutely contactless with Nora, as we had never shared any contact details except our address. And because of that, I was feeling out of my zone, as I was so much used to seeing her every day. Then, one day, I got a letter in the mail addressed to me. It didn't say who it was from, though, so I hurriedly opened it. The letter had only one line written on it: "I miss you," and some contact details. I knew it was from Nora, so I immediately texted the number that was there. "I miss you more," I texted back. We planned to meet the same day and met up. She came and hugged me as soon as she saw me. Just a few days without her had felt like an eternity. "I would really like having you around," I said to her. "Me too," she smiled and said. And the next thing you know, we were moving in together, and a couple of years later, we got married on a beautiful beach. Nora looked so beautiful in her white wedding gown. But on the day of our marriage, something horrifying happened. The police called us to inform us that Rick, the crazy scientist, had escaped from the prison he was held in, and Nora also said that she saw someone like him in our reception party. We got really scared, so we discussed with our relatives and moved to settle in another country. And we have been living together happily ever since, but we still take very much care while dealing with people outdoors and keeping our lives on the low. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, comment. Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel. I've dated a lot of girls in my life, but when I finally met Megan, I believed I'd found the perfect girlfriend. I was in college at the time, and I met Megan in the library. We spotted each other from across the room, and it was love at first sight. She was so funny and beautiful. She had long locks of brown hair and sparkling green eyes. When I asked her out and she said yes, I couldn't believe it. We started dating, and I realized just how horrific my past relationships had been. Megan was always so easy to talk to, and she never got jealous like the other girls. She also gave me space to hang out with my other friends. She wasn't one of those girls that hung on to you every second of the day. I felt so lucky. I had found the perfect girlfriend. Or so I thought. But before I go on, don't forget to like and subscribe and click the notification bell for more crazy stories like this one. When Megan and I had been dating for around a month, things started to change. It started off small. Sometimes I would go to my closet and try to find my favorite red shirt, and it would be missing. I would look everywhere, but I couldn't find it. Other things started to go missing too. My earphones disappeared, even though I had sworn I'd seen them on the kitchen table just a minute ago. Some of the essays that I had written would disappear, even though they had been safely tucked into my folders. It didn't make any sense. Sometimes money would disappear from my wallet as well. I asked Megan, but she said she had no idea where they had gone. Weeks went by, and I soon forgot about my missing stuff. Then, I went to Megan's dorm room one day. I was in her bedroom, and she was outside chatting to some friends. I was standing beside her bed, and as I bent down to tie my shoelaces, I looked under her bed. What I saw made me gasp. All of my missing stuff was there. My favorite shirt, my earphones, my essays, my money? How on earth did it get there? Why did Megan have it? When Megan returned to her room, I confronted her about it. "Why do you have all my stuff?" I asked. "I have no idea," replied Megan. "Maybe someone found it and put it under there. Maybe someone's trying to frame me." She started to act scared and was fearful that someone was trying to sabotage her life. Being the sympathetic fool, I immediately tried to comfort her and tell her it was all right. What she was saying didn't really make any sense, but I trusted Megan, so I forgot about the missing stuff. You remember how I told you Megan would let me have time to myself? Well, after several weeks of dating, all that changed. She would start forcing me to be with her and hang out instead of studying. I had to spend every second of every day with her, even if I didn't want to. But she told me she missed me so much, so I believed and trusted her. But as I spent more and more time with her, and less time studying for college, my grades started to decline. But I had the perfect girlfriend, so I didn't mind sacrificing my grades if it meant I could stay with Megan. But then, sometimes I would be in my dorm with Megan and I would go to the bathroom for a second. I would come out and Megan would be on my computer, looking through all my files. She was really disregarding my privacy. But when I asked her what she was doing, she said she was just searching up something on Google, so I let it slide. As a couple, we would send pics to each other on our phones, and I would send a bunch of funny faces and embarrassing photos that I would prefer to stay between us. But then Megan would screenshot them, joking she would use it for blackmail. I laughed it off as well, but little did I know what she was capable of. Then one night, something really scary happened. I was sleeping in my bed and I thought I heard a noise. I woke up, heart beating fast, and I saw Megan sitting in a chair, just staring at me. I cried out in shock. I leaned over to turn my bedside lamp on, and when I turned back, she was gone. I asked Megan about it, but she said I must have been dreaming. It felt so real to me. But again, I trusted her, so I let it go. Then something happened that was really weird. I was on my way to class, walking with a bunch of my friends, and people started staring at me strangely, and laughing and pointing at me. I had no idea what was going on. Then one of my friends pulled out their phone and cried out. Some anonymous person had posted all of my embarrassing photos online. I was mortified. But the only person who had seen those photos was Megan. Surely she wouldn't have leaked them. She was my girlfriend. She loved me, right? I was so confused. I didn't want to believe she would do that. Where had the perfect girlfriend I had fallen in love with all that time ago gone? I wanted her back. It was like one of those commercials on TV when they show you a product and it looks so amazing and attractive, but then when you actually get it, it turns out it's just a sloppy mess. I decided I had to ask Megan. I sent her a message and told her to meet me in the library, the place where we first met. When I got there, she was on the table, calmly reading a book. I stormed over to her and asked her about the photos. "How did this happen?" I asked in anger. But Megan just stayed silent and didn't speak. I kept talking to her, but she just looked at me blankly. "Why aren't you answering me? How did these photos get out?" I repeated. Again, all I received was silence. Then Megan stood up from her seat and just walked away. As if I hadn't said a thing. As if nothing was wrong. As if my entire life wasn't ruined by these leaked photos. To this day, I still remember that blank look on her face, and it still sends chills down my spine. I couldn't understand what was happening. What was wrong with Megan? She used to be the most perfect girlfriend. What happened? Then I decided to confront her. I asked her what was wrong, and she finally revealed everything. My so-called perfect girlfriend wasn't who I thought she was. We were in my dorm room and I pulled her onto my bed. No more lies, no more unanswered questions. I needed to know what was wrong. "What's happening, Megan? Why are you acting so strange?" I asked. Megan looked at me, then she rolled her eyes. I was shocked. I lifted my hands, moving to hug her, to figure out what was wrong. But she turned away from me as if I was revolting. I was so hurt. Why was she acting this way? A week ago, she had clung on to me like I was a life buoy. Why did she turn away from me now? "Get away from me," she snapped at me. I was so confused. "What? Why, Megan?" She scowled. "I'm not Megan, you idiot." My mind couldn't process her words. "What are you talking about?" Megan sighed, and then she brought her fingers to her eyes. I stared numbly at her as she seemed to dig into her eyes. She showed her hands to me, and I glanced at the eye contacts in them. I looked back up at her and was startled by her blue eyes, but she used to have green eyes. "What?" I mumbled. Then Megan sighed again and grabbed at her hair. I cried out in surprise as her hair fell off, revealing the blonde hair beneath it. She had been wearing a wig all this time and green eye contacts. But why? What was the point? Then I looked at her more closely, and everything made sense. As it turned out, her real name wasn't Megan. It was Sarah, my ex-girlfriend from high school. My mind recalled memories of Sarah, my ex-girlfriend from high school who was blonde and had blue eyes. She was sitting right in front of me, but why was she here? Why had she disguised herself and dated me? "Sarah," I cried out. "Oh, now you remember me," she said. I gasped. "But why? Why did you do this?" Sarah looked at me with hatred. "Because you were a terrible boyfriend. You always treated me badly, and I needed revenge." "So you leaked the photos?" "Yeah, and I did steal that stuff, you imbecile. I can't believe you didn't realize it." I trembled under the realization that Sarah had changed her identity to get revenge on me and had used her cover as my girlfriend to sabotage my life. Because of her, my reputation was ruined. My grades had fallen and I was broke. I couldn't believe it. Had I really treated her that badly? Was I really a terrible boyfriend? I tried to remember that one year in high school when I had dated her. I was a different man back then. I was probably known as the school bully. I guess I had been mean to her sometimes. I remember calling her names like Stinky Sarah. Or I remember in class when I had spread the rumor that she had 7 toes on one foot. If you ask me why I did horrible things like that, I wouldn't know what to say. Maybe it was just me acting up with my weird teenage hormones. I don't know, but was it really worth plotting revenge against me? Putting all this effort into deceiving me? Besides, I was a different person now. I was kind. I respected women. Couldn't she see that? I had changed. But then Sarah spoke up. "I guess the gig is up. So here's the deal. If you don't apologize to me and admit you were a terrible boyfriend, I'm going to leak even more photos, some of which you really don't want getting out. Trust me." I relented. "Fine," I said. "I'm a terrible boyfriend." Sarah smiled evilly. "And you suck." I sighed. "And I suck." That's all I needed to hear. She stood up, walked out of the room, and I never saw her again. Well, not in person at least. I was in my last year of college and I was watching the news one day when Sarah's face popped up on screen. Except this time, she had neither blonde nor brown hair. She had jet black hair, and it was cut in a bob. She was also wearing dark brown eye contacts. I was shocked by her appearance, but nothing shocked me more than the anchorman when he said she was in prison. She had been involved in a bank robbery and had stole over $1 million. The police had caught her and she would be serving a sentence of 6 years. I was somewhat relieved as I wouldn't have to worry about seeing her for another 6 years. But I was also saddened by how she had turned out. She was a maniac. Was it because of me? Is that why she acted so crazy? Had her hatred and revenge for me driven her insane? And then I started to fear for the future. What about when she was released from prison? What if her time spent there just fueled her hatred towards me? What if she came out wanting to seek revenge again? I still don't know. I still haven't seen Sarah. I'm not sure what was wrong with her. But one thing's for certain. Sarah, Megan, whoever she was one crazy girlfriend. And she wasn't the perfect girlfriend I had initially believed her to be. "Colin, something came in the mail for you," my mom shouted. "Coming, Mom," I said as I rushed downstairs. When I reached the dining room, she handed me an envelope addressed from my dream college. This was the letter I had been waiting for. I grabbed it nervously and opened it as quickly as I could. "I got in! I got in!" I screamed. I was so excited. I would finally be moving out of this small town and going to college to study computer science. I'd be traveling over 2,000 miles away to start a life of my own. I felt so relieved. I'd finally be free. A few weeks later, I was all packed and ready to leave. My family came to see me off at the airport. As the plane took off, I imagined my new independence as a college student. When I arrived on campus, I realized that I forgot the most important task on my to-do list. I hadn't registered for a dorm room. I found my way to the student center and asked if they could help. "Well, all of the rooms are fully booked, honey," said an old lady who was sitting at a desk. "What am I supposed to do now? I have nowhere to stay," I replied. At that moment, a girl walked in and said, "Hi, I'm Megan. I'm renting off campus and there's an extra room," she smiled. "Well, that's if you don't mind living with a girl and a complete stranger," she laughed. At that point, I felt like I had no choice, so I followed her. I'd never even had a girlfriend, so it'd be really weird living with someone who wasn't a guy. So what do you study here?" I asked. "Medicine," she replied. We arrived at the apartment, which was on the 9th floor of a breathtaking complex. It was pretty luxurious for the average college student. I was so impressed, but how would I afford it? She showed me around and we discussed the rent details. It turned out to be pretty affordable. What luck! I went to my huge room with an ensuite bathroom to get unpacked. I was almost on the streets, but instead, I was in a room that was better than my own at home. When I woke up the next day, the apartment was empty, and this is pretty much how it was almost every day. When Megan was around, she only said a few words, then went to her room or disappeared to God knows where. As for me, I was enjoying the heck out of college life. I went to parties, stayed up late, drank, but not too much, and really lived. My classes were awesome because I was finally doing what I loved. To make it even better, I met Sandra, the smartest person in our class. There was a lot of chemistry between us. We started off studying at the library together, and eventually we went out on dates. I could tell she really liked me, and I was beginning to fall head over heels in love with her. I think that all the trouble started when I brought her back to the apartment one evening. She lost the key for her room, and it was too late to call anyone about it, so I told her she could stay there. We sat in the living room watching TV when Megan walked in. "Hey, Megan," I said. "Hi," she replied with a confused expression on her face. "Who is that?" she asked angrily. "This is Sandra, my really good friend. She lost the key to her room, so I told her she could stay here tonight," I replied, curious as to why Megan seemed so upset. "Why'd you have to bring her here? Doesn't she have other friends?" Megan asked without even looking at Sandra. I think I should leave," Sandra said. "No, don't. Let's just go to my room. Maybe Megan wants to watch TV," I said. I got up, scowled at Megan, and escorted Sandra to my room, ensuring to slam the door so she'd get the point. What had gotten into her? The next day, Megan was gone before we woke up. Sandra left and got her room sorted out, and I tried not to think too much about last night's confusing experience. When I got back to the apartment later, Megan greeted me at the door with a smile. "Hi, Colin. I'm sorry about what happened last night. Here, I've done something to make it up to you. Are you hungry?" she said. She took me to the dining table where a beautiful candlelit dinner was set up. "Wow, it was okay though. I figured you were probably in one of your moods. You didn't have to do all of this," I replied while stuttering because I felt extremely uncomfortable. "Yes, I did. Please sit," she said. I sat down and began to eat. I could never turn down food. Midway into the meal, Megan said, "Colin, there's something I need to tell you." "Huh? What is it?" I managed to say through a mouthful of food. "I have feelings for you, romantic ones. Like, ever since I met you at the Student Services Center, I felt that we had a special connection. When you agreed to live with me, I was so happy. I wanted you to stay so badly that I'm actually covering 3/4 of your rent. I know I didn't always show that I had feelings for you, but that's about to change today. I reacted that way last night because you brought someone else here, and I thought that maybe you had feelings for her instead of me," she said. I dropped my fork and stared blankly. "Megan, you're a nice person and all, don't get me wrong, but Sandra and I are sort of dating. I was actually thinking of asking her to be my girlfriend pretty soon. And I don't really think you're my type anyway. I'm sorry, Megan," I said. She instantly burst into tears. I went over to her side of the table and patted her on her shoulder. I cleared up the dinner because it was the least that I could do after breaking her heart. Then I went to my room. The next morning, Megan hadn't left yet, which was odd. I was used to waking up to an empty apartment. "Good morning, Colin," she said. Good morning," I replied. "I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable last night. I was just tired of hiding my feelings. Here, I packed you a breakfast because I know you've got an early class today," she said. "Gee, thanks, Megan. I'm actually running late." "See you later," I said while rushing out of the door. While walking to my class, I actually considered finding a new place to live. How was I going to live with a person who was obsessed with me? One that I had no interest in. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Sandra. "Hey, can you meet me near the library before class? There's something I want to talk to you about," she said. "Sure, I'm on my way," I replied. When I got there, she was already waiting. She smiled and we walked to a nearby bench. "Well, what is it?" I asked. "We've been going out for a while and, well, I was wondering when you'd ask me to be your girlfriend. Do you really care about me?" she said sadly. "Wow, of course I care about you. I'm in love with you and I was afraid to ask you to be my girlfriend because I wasn't sure if it was the right time," I replied. I held her hands and looked into her eyes. "Sandra, I'd really like for us to become more than friends. Will you be my girlfriend?" I asked. "Yes," she smiled. Instead of going to class, we spent the day together. We had a wonderful, romantic time. Later, I went back to the apartment. When I got there, Megan was sitting in the living room. "Hey, Colin, how was your day?" she asked. "Hi, it was okay, thanks," I said uncomfortably as I fled to my room. A few minutes later, I heard a knock on my door. "Yes?" I asked. "Can you help me with something? I think the light in my room is broken and I don't know how to fix it," Megan said. "Sure, I'll be right there," I replied. I left my room and walked over to hers. She opened the door and I noticed that the light was on. "There's nothing wrong with this," I said. She reached behind me and I heard a click. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Colin, I explained to you that I had feelings for you and you didn't care. You didn't even care that you hurt my feelings. I'm locking you here in my room until you fall in love with me. You're the only one I want, so you have to feel the same way too, eventually," she said. "What?" I screamed. "You can't do that. That's a crime. I'll have you arrested. You're psychotic and you need help right now." I was so angry. I reached for the door and tried to unlock it. "It can only be activated by my fingerprint. You won't be able to get out," she smirked. I ran to the window and tried to open it. "That's also pointless," she laughed. "The window's locked." Even if I did get out, we were on the 9th floor. I'd seriously hurt myself if I tried to escape through there. I decided to try a different approach. "Please let me out," I said calmly. "I can't stay in here. I have to go to my classes. What will my parents think if they don't hear from me? Please don't do this," I pleaded. "Food, clothing, and shelter are the basic necessities, and you'll have them all. Anything else is a luxury. I will send a message to your parents once a week from your phone so they'd know you're okay," she replied coldly. Oh crap, I left my phone in my room, I thought. "You're insane. Let me out," I said. "You're not going anywhere until I'm sure you love me back. Anyway, you might as well sit down and make yourself comfortable," she said. Her room was pretty huge, much bigger than mine. There was a king-size bed, a couch, television, desktop computer, and like my room, she also had an ensuite bathroom, so there was no way I could use that as a way out. I sat on the couch and stared into space. I didn't know what to do next. A whole 2 weeks passed. Megan tried to be nice to me, but I refused to talk to her. Every day, she brought me my favorite foods and other things she thought I would like. She told me that my parents weren't worried about me because she'd been sending them messages while pretending to be me. The days and nights were very long, and every attempt I made to escape was prevented. I missed Sandra. I wondered what she thought of me and why I hadn't been in touch. After about a month, I started speaking a bit. I'd give her one-word answers when she asked about my day. 6 months later, I began to notice the little things about her, the way she combed her hair and laughed when she watched stupid sitcoms. I began to notice the sparkle in her eyes whenever she did something nice for me. But I quickly shut down those feelings because after all, she was my kidnapper. The days and nights got shorter and less painful. I didn't really miss the outdoors that much because Megan did everything she could to make my life interesting. Eventually, we started having fun. And to be honest, I'm not even sure how that happened, but I began to hate her less. A lot less. I began to lose track of time, and I'm not sure how much had passed when one night she sat next to me and said, "Do you love me, Colin?" I looked at her and saw that sparkle in her eye again. I looked down and thought for a while that she had been so loving towards me even though I continuously pushed her away. She fed me and tried to make me happy, and that was more than anyone had ever done for me. I looked at her and said, yes. And maybe I did, or maybe it was Stockholm Syndrome, but 5 years later, and we are still together. I had to drop out of college because I had missed a whole year. Sandra thought that I had ghosted her and she moved on. Am I happy? I think so. Do I need a therapist? Probably.
Ordinary middle school girls usually occupy their time by going to the mall, painting their nails, talking about crushes, and doing homework. I suppose I was ordinary once. I had a fun group of friends, and we did all of those exciting things. Until my last year of middle school, everything changed. I was sitting in class passing notes to my best friend Marianne when everyone suddenly went silent. I looked up and saw the most gorgeous creature I had ever seen in my life. "Good morning, students. My name is Mr. Scott. I'm your new geography teacher for the year," he said. I sat in awe. I would get to look at this man at least 3 times a week? Wow. I felt like my heart had grown wings and was about to flutter away. He went around the class and asked everyone to introduce themselves. When he got to me, my thoughts were so muddled up that I only managed to mumble some nonsense. "Me, Jenna, geography fun?" I said. Everyone burst out laughing, and he shot me a cute, shy smile. He likes me too, I thought. I mean, if he didn't, why would he smile at me? I was determined that he would be mine somehow. I was going to do whatever it took. At first, I tried to send him simple hints. Every time we submitted an assignment, I'd cover it with hearts. I also left anonymous treats on his desk. Cookies, brownies, pens, apples, you name it. Every day I managed to find something different. I knew the answers to all of his questions in class and ensured that I topped every single exam. It set me apart from the rest of the class, and I figured that if I could become his favorite student, it was one step closer to achieving my goal. I kept imagining the day he'd finally say, "Jenna, you're perfect. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." I would constantly daydream about that. "Jenna, you've got to stop," my best friend Marianne said to me one afternoon while we were walking home from school. My head was in the clouds as usual. "Stop what?" I replied. "Your feelings towards Mr. Scott are just wrong. He's a teacher. He's much older than you. He'll never be interested in you the way you're interested in him. Besides, what's wrong with the boys at our school? You've changed so much and it worries me," she said. "They're gross and immature. Mr. Scott is handsome, intelligent, and perfect. I think you're just jealous that I'm his favorite," I said. Marianne rolled her eyes and changed the topic. I started to think that she was a bit right, though. I had changed. I wasn't interested in hanging out with my friends anymore. During my free time, I did nothing but obsess over Mr. Scott. I avoided sleepovers, trips to the mall, and I even quit tennis. I love tennis, but not more than dreamy, perfect Mr. Scott. The saddest day of my life was the last day of middle school. I realized that I would be separated from my future husband because I'd be starting high school after summer. I wonder if I can find a way to stay here for one more year, I thought. But no, everyone would think I was stupid. I've got to find another way, I decided. I spent the summer stalking his Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I managed to bump into him a few times accidentally, but every time I returned home, I still felt the sinking feeling that I would be separated from him. Well, the summer zoomed by, and before I knew it, I was at high school surrounded by new, unfamiliar faces. At least Marianne was there. Regardless, I was having the worst day ever. Firstly, I was late for school and ended up bumping into the most popular girl, causing her phone to fall on the ground and break. Great, my social life here is ruined already, I thought. I tried to make things right, but she was upset and all of her friends jeered at me. Then I got lost on my way to math class. I ended up arriving late and the horrible teacher gave me a detention. So I sat in my class during the last period of the day with a sad expression on my face, expecting the worst. "Aw, cheer up, Jenna," Marianne said. "Tomorrow will probably be better." "No, everything sucks here," I sulked. Little did I know that everything was about to stop sucking because suddenly he walked in. I was flabbergasted. Was I dreaming? "Marianne, pinch me," I whispered. "No, Jenna, you're not dreaming. That really is Mr. Scott," she said. "Good afternoon, class. Some of you are my past students, and you might be surprised to see me here. I've been assigned to this school for the next 4 years. Please get out your textbooks," he said. He looked at me and winked. "Oh my gosh, he came to teach here just to be with me. I know it," I thought. I blushed and smiled. I could not contain my happiness. Everything awful that happened earlier had been erased from my memory. Weeks later, my popularity began to improve. Lots of guys would ask for my number or ask to hang out, but I'd turn all of them down. I couldn't allow myself to be seen with them anyway. What would Mr. Scott think? As time went by, I continued stalking him on social media, and I'd often bump into him on the weekends. His favorite sport was basketball, and he'd go to a court in the neighborhood to shoot a few hoops with whoever was there. He'd go there every Saturday, so I'd go there too and just sit on the benches watching. The first few times, he just waved and smiled at me. However, one afternoon he spoke. "Hey, Jenna, how come you're always here? Are you waiting for someone?" he asked. No, I just like it here," I smiled. "Oh, well, okay. You're welcome to play then. It must be boring just sitting there all alone," he said. I tried, but I embarrassed myself miserably. I was horrible at sports. "Oh, don't worry, Jenna. You can't be perfect at everything," he winked. My heart fluttered again. Was he flirting? I thought. "Anyway, I have to go," he said and sped off. This was the beginning of my disappointments with Mr. Scott. Every time I felt that we were about to get closer, he made some excuse to leave. The years passed, and I had gotten nowhere close to achieving my goal with him. In my final year of high school, I decided that I would need to be more assertive. I made up my mind to stay back after class after everyone had left, so I could reveal my true feelings to him. I walked up to him shyly. "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" I said. "Sure, Jenna. What's up? By the way, great job on that last quiz. You'd make a fine geologist someday," he replied. I wasted no time getting straight to the point. "I'm in love with you, and I know you feel the same way about me. I know it's not completely acceptable because you're a teacher and I'm a student, but I'm getting out of high school next year. We can be together then. You're the only person I've ever had feelings for, and I will never feel this way about anyone else." I spilled it all out, and I even surprised myself. His face went completely blank. "You should leave," he said. I was heartbroken. I spilled my heart and soul out to the one I loved, and he just asked me to leave. That night, I cried myself to sleep. The next day, I found out I had been removed from his class. I was devastated, but I decided I wasn't going to give up. I ignored him for a few days until I devised a new plan. I was stalking him on Instagram one night when I noticed that he tagged himself at a nearby restaurant. I decided that I'd go there and try to talk to him calmly. Maybe he would be less mean and uncomfortable if we were out of the school environment. I got dressed quickly and snuck out of my house. When I got to the restaurant, I saw him sitting there alone. I quietly walked in and sat next to him. "Hi," I said. "Oh my gosh, Jenna, what are you doing here?" he asked. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for coming across so strongly. Maybe you just want to take your time, and I understand that," I said. "Listen, Jenna, I do not feel the same way you do. It's not only insane, but it's extremely inappropriate. Do your parents know where you are? You need to leave." He began to raise his voice. Suddenly, a woman appeared behind him. "Honey, the baby keeps kicking," she said. "Is that your sister?" I asked. "No, Jenna, this is my girlfriend, Leah. She's the love of my life, and we're getting married soon. She's 8 months pregnant. I'm going to be a dad," he replied. He stood up and hugged her. I got up and screamed. "What the hell? How could you get another woman pregnant? You know that we are destined for each other, and you impregnated this cow?" The woman looked at Mr. Scott strangely. "Who is this crazy person?" she said to him. "How dare you call me crazy? He is the love of my life, and you've just come to interfere with everything. You will never succeed. He will be mine," I screamed. I picked up 2 glasses and smashed them on the floor, then I stormed outside. Everyone looked on in horror. By the time I got home, the video of the entire encounter was already online. My phone rang. "Jenna, are you crazy? Why did you do that?" It was Marianne. "Did you know he had a girlfriend? She's pregnant. How could he do this to me?" I cried. "For years, I've been trying to tell you that this is a bad idea. Can you please calm down and decide to move on with your life? There are many other cute guys who are interested in you, but you keep pushing them away in pursuit of this impossible love story," she said. "You never support my dreams. I hate you," I said, and I hung up. The next week, my parents were called to my school. We all had to sit with the principal to discuss my conduct. "Are you aware that your daughter has been stalking a teacher?" he said. "We've raised our daughter better than that. You're making this up," my mom replied. "Yes, she's at the top of most of her classes. She's a star student. What are you talking about?" My dad added. "Well, if you don't believe me, I'll just have to show you," the principal said as he handed them his cell phone. There I was, smashing glasses and threatening a pregnant woman. My parents were so shocked that they couldn't move. "I'm very sorry, but we will no longer be able to keep her at this school. In other words, she has been expelled. I also recommend immediate counseling as I believe she is facing some serious issues," said the principal. We walked out of the office solemnly. The next week, my parents sent me off to a strict boarding school for girls, all the way in Switzerland. I cried and pleaded with them to change their minds, but they would not listen. I had already embarrassed them enough, and they believed I had to face the consequences. There was no hope. I tried to talk to Marianne again, but she wanted nothing to do with me. Trying to get my crush to love me only resulted in me being sent miles away from him. I was crushed. Not only that I would probably never see him again, but that another woman was going to enjoy a happy life with him. They would be starting a beautiful family, and I would be stuck here, all alone.
Hi, I'd love to tell you how I finally managed to begin dating my long-term crush, Britta. You see, I'm not particularly shy, but when it came to Britta, I just lost my nerve. I don't know what it was about her that made me a mumbling fool. I mean, damned. I could be talking with any other girl or boy like it was no big deal. Then, Britta would walk down the hall and I'd blush and go quiet. It was uncanny. I simply couldn't get over it. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button, and activate the notification bell. This will let you live 20 amazing years longer. Trust me, it works. Actually, it all started back in elementary school. We shared our classes together, and from the first time I saw her, I fumbled. She was the prettiest girl in school to me, even if we were really, really young. She had long brown hair, always combed back in 2 ponytails. I thought those were the cutest ponytails in the world. Yeah, I had a big puppy love on her, and I was like, 7 or something? It's kind of lame that it took me so long to actually ask her out. It all happened because both our friends got super tired of seeing us go through this endless will they, won't they scene over and over again. Let me tell you how I ended up locked up in a closet with Britta, my childhood crush. Britta wasn't just pretty. Oh no, she was also super smart and the president of our student council. I loved to see her campaigning for her position every year, smiling at everyone with that big grin on her face. I listened to her proposals to improve the school programs like a million times. Well, I never actually heard any of it. I just used it as an excuse to stare at her without her realizing what I was doing. I'd get lost in those beautiful eyes of hers. She dressed all prim and proper everywhere she went, too, like cute pleated skirts and nice blouses. I don't know what it was about her, or if it was everything she did, really, but I couldn't stop thinking about Britta. My mom used to laugh when I spoke about her and thought it was so sweet the way I always had nice things to say about this girl. "You know, Mike, you speak about Britta as most boys speak about Candy, with that dreamy look in their eyes," she once said. I must have been 8 back then, but this never changed. Mom said I always got the same look whenever someone mentioned it. I'm not sure if it's sweet or creepy, but I couldn't help myself. As long as I had memory, I had always been in love with Britta. We were good friends, too. It was just that I was so awkward around her. Whenever I tried to act cool, I ended up making a fool of myself. My friends made fun of me all the time because of it. Britta lived a block and a half away from me, so I'd walk her home often. We'd talk about anything and everything, but I never, ever dared ask her out. It was as if when it came to admitting my feelings, I just froze around her. I couldn't get past this problem. It was so annoying. I mean, if I had been shy around everyone, well, maybe I would have understood it. But it was just when it came to my feelings for this pretty brown-haired girl that I couldn't get over my feelings of self-doubt. I guess I thought she was so perfect that there was no way in hell she'd ever date a guy like me, you know? I mean, I'm not ugly or anything of the sort, and girls flirt with me all the time, but she was just too beautiful, too smart, too everything. And the worst part was, all our mutual friends knew about my crush. And I do mean everyone. It was one of those secrets that all around you are aware of, but everyone pretends not to know about it. "Come on, man, ask her out already. What's the worst that could happen?" my friends would ask me, super annoyed with me always sighing about Britta. "She could say no," I'd always reply. To me, that was the worst possible outcome. If I didn't ask her out, then I didn't know if it was possible or not. I could imagine one day we'd begin dating and then get married. But if she finally found out my feelings for her and rejected me, it was all over. Years and years of being in love with someone who'd never love me back, thrown away for nothing. I couldn't face that possibility. I know it sounds super lame, but that's how much I really liked Britta. Every single time I promised my friends I'd ask her out the very next day, I'd find an excuse to avoid it. "Oh, I'm feeling super sick today," I would say. Or maybe, "I have this big pimple today. I don't want her to see me like this." So days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The right time to ask her out never seemed to arrive, and my friends were growing super impatient. Apparently, they talked to her friends all the time, and she felt the same way about me. But that's something neither Britta or I knew. It was like this gossip everyone was involved in except for the both of us. "I have the whole situation under control. I promise," I said over and over again. Finally, our friends got tired of waiting for us to make the first move and made a plan. They were going to force us to be in the same place for a long while. And if we didn't finally ask each other out, then they were going to give up. It was then or never. So one day, my friends grabbed me and began forcing me into the janitor's closet. I tried to fight them, playfully of course, thinking it was just a silly prank. "Hey guys, quit it. I have to get to class," I yelled, laughing. But I couldn't win against 5 guys pushing me into a little room. They closed the door and locked it behind them. I sighed and rolled my eyes, wondering what they had in store for me. "Don't worry about it. We'll be back soon," they yelled through the door, and I rolled my eyes. You see, my friends were really big pranksters, so this didn't seem too odd to me. It was annoying, yes, especially since I didn't want to be tardy or get in trouble. However, it seemed I had nothing to do but wait. A few minutes later, the door opened, and I was shocked to see Britta being dragged by her friends inside the closet as well. She looked just as surprised as I had been a while ago. They threw her in there as well and locked the door behind them. We were both like, WTF is going on? My heart dropped. I felt so anxious, and I'm sure I blushed so hard. I was locked up with Britta, and it made me feel so excited and worried at the same time. We heard giggling from the other side of the room, and I knew our friends had planned all of this for some odd reason. We kind of awkwardly stood there for a minute in silence, then tried knocking on the door, but no one answered. "I guess we are really stuck in here, huh?" Britta asked, her brown hair hanging prettily over her shoulders. "I guess so," I mumbled, shrugging quietly. So bit by bit, we began talking, asking ourselves why we were locked up in that closet. We began throwing silly theories around, making each other laugh. I couldn't get over how beautiful her giggles were, and how badly I wanted her to be my girlfriend. We knew there was no point in trying to make an escape, and so we just sat down and continued to chat. I mumbled most of what I said, as I always did when she was around. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I kept telling myself this was my chance, that I had to ask her out. Finally, she looked at me and asked, "Why are you always so nervous around me, Mike?" I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to let her know how I felt about her, but all I could do was stare at the floor quietly. "Hey, Mike, will you close your eyes, please?" she asked me. I looked up at her puzzled, but nodded. The moment I closed my eyes, Britta kissed me. I couldn't believe what was going on. I opened my eyes and smiled. That kiss, sweet and small, sure helped ease my nervousness. It was the confirmation that she did like me, that I had a chance with her. Holding my breath, I kissed her back, and this time she closed her eyes. Her lips were so soft and perfect. It was everything I had hoped it would be. So we started really talking, and for the first time since we met, I could speak to her without feeling incredibly insecure. I even held her hand and pulled her a bit closer to me. Finally, about an hour after being locked in there with her, I dared ask the question I had been holding in for so many years. "Britta, would you go on a date with me?" I asked. And do you know what she said? "Yes, I'd love to." We spent the rest of our time there planning out our date. It seemed like a dream come true. When our friends finally unlocked the door, we kissed goodbye and walked away. My friends followed behind me, and her friends did the same with her. "So, how did it go?" they asked me. They all looked so excited, especially after seeing us kiss. I told them everything that happened, and we high-fived like crazy. "You finally did it, man. It took you 9 years, but you finally did it." My best friend patted my back, and I can't explain how happy I was right then. "Thank you, guys. I can't believe your crazy plan worked," I said, really grateful for all the trouble they had gone through. Britta and I went on our first date, and then our second and third and fourth. We've made it official, and I've already asked her to go with me to prom. I can't believe my girlfriend is really the most gorgeous girl in school. I used up all my savings to rent a limo and a suit. I want this to be the most special night of her entire life. Britta's been my secret crush ever since I was a kid, and now we are a real, official couple. We go out on dates twice a week, and I buy her flowers whenever I can. She loves lilies and white roses, and her birthday's coming up soon. I want to give her a ring, sort of a pre-engagement thing, you know? I understand we are super young to be talking about marriage yet, but I want to let her know that I'm really committed to her. After all, I do believe Britta is the love of my life. Thank you for watching. Have you ever struggled to ask a guy or a girl out on a date? And did you dare do it in the end? Did they say yes or rejected you? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel.
Hi, my name is Andrew, and I'd like to tell you the story of how I got stuck in the elevator with the girl I liked. Her name is Allison, and I never imagined that I'd get to spend so much time with her with no one else around. It was both a blessing and a curse, I can tell you as much. Allison was an incredibly beautiful girl. She had the prettiest blue eyes and dark short hair. She was also the smartest girl in my class. I was in awe of Allison, but was too shy to speak to her, so she didn't even know I existed. The perfect chance to finally change this fact came right after class had ended on a boring Friday afternoon. Most of the students had already left for the weekend, and I saw Allison getting on the elevator. She was probably going up to the library to return her books. I rushed forward, not even thinking twice about it. If I got in the elevator with her, maybe I'd finally get a chance to speak to her. I wanted to find out so much about Allison. What she liked, what she hated, what her favorite book was. I'd admired her from afar for so long, but didn't know almost anything about her personal life. I wanted to change this fact, and I wanted her to know more about me as well. I wished that maybe she might find me interesting, and perhaps, just perhaps, get the courage to actually ask her out on a date. I had daydreamed so often about this moment. There were so many jokes and cute remarks I'd pictured myself saying in every imaginary conversation. She laughed and smiled constantly. She was interested in me, at least in my head. But in the real world, Allison didn't even know my name. Perhaps this was my chance to finally change this fact. The problem was, I had rushed to get to the elevator before the door closed. I wished that she hadn't seen me running, because that would have been so lame. I actually placed my foot in between the doors to keep them from closing, and managed to get inside just in time. When I stepped inside, she gave me a sweet little smile, and then looked up ahead again. As I had imagined, the floor she had selected was the one leading up to the library. She was so responsible and well-read. I know that might not sound like an amazing trait to some people, but to me, it only made me fancy her more. Anyways, I kept trying to talk to her, and knew that the elevator trip would be super short, but every time I tried to open my mouth, I felt sick to my stomach. When I thought all hope was lost, something strange happened. The elevator suddenly rocked from side to side and then came to a sudden halt. We almost fell to the ground, but I managed to hold her just before she tripped over. I ended up with my arms wrapped around her, leaning back against the lift's wall to regain my balance. She blushed and thanked me, standing back up. I felt awful about not having her in my arms any longer, but I couldn't let her know that, so I just smiled timidly and shrugged. We both tried to see what was wrong with the elevator, but it seemed just to be stuck. So we pressed the emergency button and decided it was best to wait for help to arrive. She gave me a few awkward looks, but we just stood there in perfect silence for the first few minutes or two. Finally, she introduced herself, and I pretended I didn't already know her name. I did tell her I thought I had seen her in a few of my classes, and she seemed surprised. Apparently, she had never even noticed me before. That kind of stung, but I shrugged it off. The past didn't matter any longer, only the future. And if I played my cards right, there might be a future for both of us after all. The conversation was admittedly a bit awkward at first. We talked about our classes and the weather, and we kept getting stuck in these uncomfortable silences before one of us dared to speak again. After a while, we tried pressing the button again and heard it ring. Surely someone would be there to help us out shortly, we figured out. After all, the bell was really loud. So we began talking more openly, and that made me feel better. She was really funny, just like I had imagined. But the problem was, minutes kept going by and no one came to help us. That was when we began to get really nervous. Allison and I decided to begin screaming for help and banging on the walls of the elevator. No one answered. I checked the time and realized that by that hour, every single student had left already, and probably most of the teachers. We were stuck in there, and might have to stay locked in an elevator all through the weekend. We immediately began freaking out for real. It took us some time to calm down. She was in tears, but I reminded her that our parents would get worried soon, so we might have to wait a few hours, but someone would eventually come to help us. Or so I hoped. She seemed to believe me and wiped off her tears. I mean, I know we both understood that even if our parents realized we were missing, they might not think to look for us at school. But it was a reassuring thought, and we both clung to it. Panicking would only make a bad situation worse. I suggested we play a game to relax, and she agreed. We both sat down on the floor and began asking questions to each other. The more we played, the bolder and sillier the questions got. I really learned a lot from Allison, and I told her a lot about myself. I'd never felt closer to anyone in my life. It seemed like the right time to admit my feelings for her had finally arrived. I was going to do it, at long last. I was going to tell Allison that I was in love with her, and I wanted to take her out on a real date. But before I managed to speak up, she suddenly blurted out that she was pregnant. I was in absolute shock. I asked her what she was talking about. Apparently, she'd been keeping that secret bottled up for 2 weeks, and she couldn't deal with it any longer. She needed to tell someone, and I seemed like such a sweet and trustworthy guy. Allison explained that she was dating this guy from another school, and she didn't even realize that she'd gotten pregnant until the morning sickness began. She tried telling him about it, but the guy was apparently not very nice. He once began joking about how he'd run away in a second if a chick ever tried to tie him down with a pregnancy trick. Yes, he used the word chick. What a girl like Allison was doing with a guy like that, I couldn't understand. She was sure that he'd think that she'd gotten pregnant to force him to marry her. She didn't dare tell him, and her parents would be super mad and disappointed with her. Allison told me she felt stuck, and she didn't know where to go for help. I told her that she didn't have to feel that way. It was a bump on the road, but she was smart and strong enough to pull through any adversity. She was so thankful and called me sweet, giving me a peck on the cheek. It was the best and worst moment of my life. I enjoyed the kiss, but I also knew that she was going out with another guy now. So yeah, you can say it was a bittersweet moment. The problem was, it was already really dark outside, and no one had come looking for us. We were both really hungry and didn't know how long we'd be stuck in there. We were getting really worried again that no one would rescue us until Monday. I had a few crackers and a bit of leftovers from my lunch that I shared with Allison, and that ended up being our dinner. Teasingly, I told her that this was sort of a date, and she chuckled at my joke. I wasn't really joking, though, or at least I hoped I wasn't. We barely slept at all that night, too worried and scared to rest. She did place her head on my shoulder and took a short nap, though. Allison was so warm and smelled so good. It was so much temptation to have her there, so close to me. Morning arrived, and still there wasn't any sign that anyone was coming to rescue us. We were getting thirsty, and we shared the last drops of juice that she had in her bag. That was it. From then on, we didn't have anything else to drink or eat, and it was only Saturday. We were really starting to freak out, but I didn't want to let her know that I was scared. After all, she was pregnant, and stress wasn't good for the baby. I tried to distract her by telling her silly stories and talking about my life. I also asked her a lot of questions about her personal life, and little by little, I got her to calm down. It was such a relief. Seeing her doing better made me relax as well. We talked for hours and hours, and really enjoyed each other's company. Sure, the situation was horrible, but at least we had each other. By midday, I finally decided I had nothing to lose. I admitted my feelings for her, and told Allison that a guy like her boyfriend didn't deserve her. If she was with me, I'd help her take care of her baby. She was so surprised at first, but a moment later she smiled. Allison told me that was the sweetest thing that anyone had ever said to her. And then she kissed me. I couldn't believe what was happening. The kiss was everything I had imagined and more. It was truly a magical moment, and I forgot all about being trapped in that elevator. Suddenly, we heard noises coming from a floor down. Someone was screaming her name. We called back, relieved and surprised. It was the school's janitor, accompanied by the principal and Allison's parents. They knew their daughter would never disappear like that, and that she had been heading toward the library, so they contacted the school's headmaster. No one knew I was there, but I, later on, found out that my parents had gone to the police. The problem was they had no idea where to begin searching for me. We were freed half an hour later, and I had never felt more relieved. Allison hugged her parents, and then she blurted out that she was pregnant. They were so relieved that she was okay that they didn't really get mad at her, so getting stuck in an elevator might have been a blessing after all. The very next day, I got a text from Allison asking me to hang out. She had dumped her good-for-nothing boyfriend and wanted to know if I really meant what I said in the lift. I told her I did and officially asked her out on a date. That was 5 years ago. Now we're married, and I adopted Allison's daughter. She is the most amazing little girl in the world. Thank you for watching. Have you ever had a crush on someone who doesn't even know your name? Tell us about it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel.
I know, it sounds bad. It's not a nice thing to do, baby trapping a boyfriend into staying in your life. But that's exactly what I did. My name is Amelia, and I'd like to let you know how I came to do something so drastic. I hope that once you know my side of the story, you won't still think I'm some kind of monster. Ever since I was a young girl, I've always wanted to be a mom. I would play with my dolls all the time and pretend they were all my daughters and sons. You see, I was my parents' only child, and they refused to give me any brothers or sisters. I pled and pled, but it was no good. They were determined. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button, and activate the notification bell. This will let you live 20 amazing years longer. Trust me, it works. They said they only needed a single daughter, and they loved me so much. Why expand our family any further? Plus, mom and dad didn't have any siblings either, so I didn't even have any cousins to play with. All my friends from school had big, happy families. When I arrived home, I only had my parents to keep me company, and they were frequently too busy with work to pay me any attention. So I grew up being a really lonesome child. I did have friends at school, but that just wasn't enough for me. Something was missing. My toys and dolls became my children, and my family suddenly expanded. It wasn't real, but it was something. Mom used to say that I had an overactive imagination, and that I would overcome my obsession with large families eventually. But I never did. Every single time I met someone new, I asked about their siblings and got super jealous if they had any. I wanted to know everything about how that felt like, and perhaps I might have made a few people a bit uncomfortable with my questions. Now, I'm not saying I'm some kind of crazy cat lady, but with siblings and children instead. I want to have just 3 or 4 kids, nothing else. It's not like I want 12 babies crawling around my house. But still, it's something that clearly marked my childhood, and I couldn't imagine growing up into an adult and continuing feeling so alone. So when I met the guy who'd become my boyfriend, Kyle, I wasn't too sure he was the right guy for me. After all, we were both kind of young, and teenage boys don't usually know if they want a big happy family or just have a nice time. When Kyle asked me out, I said, not at first. He kept insisting though, telling me he had fallen for me at first sight, and that I was a girl for him. He romanced me, and bit by bit, I began falling in love as well. So eventually, we began dating, and soon enough, it was official. We were boyfriend and girlfriend, and even made plans to go to the same college after we graduated. I told Kyle how important the idea of having a baby soon after I began college was, and at the time, he agreed with me. I don't really think that he was lying. After all, he did seem to like children, but it was more that he figured there was more time to grow up in that way. He probably thought that I was just fantasizing, but that I wouldn't really demand to have a baby right out of high school. Well, that's where Kyle was wrong. After being accepted into the same college, Kyle and I moved into an apartment close to the campus. It was comfortable and lovely, and we could study a whole lot there. Or at least, that was the intention. because Kyle suddenly seemed to realize how fun parties could be when he wasn't under his parents' thumbs. Oh boy, that was when things started to get messy. I've always been super responsible and love that Kyle enjoyed studying as much as I did. He was a straight A student back in high school, and I figured that wouldn't change when he entered college. But suddenly, he seemed to be more interested in going out drinking and dancing than waking up early for an exam. I was worried about him, but that was far from the most shocking realization. When I told him that one of the couples we knew back from high school were expecting their first son, he shivered and told me, "Oh man, they're ruining their lives. They should have waited at least 5 years before doing anything like that." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had told Kyle loud and clear before we even moved together that I wanted a child of my own, soon. When I reminded him of that fact, he just laughed and brushed me off. "Surely I wasn't serious, right?" he asked. But I was. And so the constant arguments and bickering began. We used to get along so well, but from the moment that I realized he didn't want children yet, well, everything became a big mess. I kept begging him to go through with what he had promised me. Kyle told me he would. He absolutely wanted to have kids with me, just not yet. Maybe after we graduated, most likely after we both had gotten great jobs. I couldn't possibly wait that long. I needed a child right that instant, and it wasn't fair that other couples we knew were getting pregnant, and I had to wait. I had been super patient all throughout high school. I knew I was too young back then, but now it was the right time, and I didn't want my boyfriend to be the person stopping me from fulfilling my dreams. His excuse was that we needed to wait in order to have enough time to study hard and graduate with honors. But I know that was a lie, and so do you, because I told you how Kyle was out partying all the time. What he didn't want was to lose the chance to be super irresponsible and go out drinking every single night. A child would be a burden to him. I could hear it in his voice, even if he didn't actually utter those words. It was so frustrating, and I couldn't comprehend why he was acting that way. Kyle had always been so sweet and considerate toward my needs. He had also been such an amazing student. Why was he changing all of a sudden? Something else began to bother me during these hard months. He used to be kinda shy back when we were in high school, but now he had become somewhat of a social butterfly. This scared me because he suddenly had so many friends who were girls. He tried to reassure me, telling me they were just friends and he didn't think any of them were hot or anything like that. Kyle would always say, "I love you and only you, babe. Stop being so jealous." I'd never cheat on the love of my life. And that sounded so sweet, sure, but something sounded kind of fake about it. I knew that he loved me. I didn't doubt this fact, because I saw it in his eyes and in the way he kissed me. But college and partying was changing my Kyle. And what would happen if one night, drunk, he ended up messing up with a girl? Then I'd lose him forever, and I couldn't allow that to happen. So that's when that perfect idea came to mind. The solution to both my problems. Yeah, I know, it's messed up and all, but at least it would give our relationship a spark. I knew he wanted one too because he had told me so. Kyle was just scared and too mesmerized by the fun parties to remember who he really was inside. After a particularly nasty argument, Kyle left and didn't return that night. He later claimed he had just slept over at one of his friend's dorms. A man, of course, he reassured me. Kyle told me he had just needed some time away from me. That was when I knew there was no more time to lose. If I didn't tie him down right then and there, he'd end up drifting away from me, and I'd lose the love of my life and the man I knew would become the father of my babies. I knew there was no way to convince him to be intimate without using any protection, so I had to be sneaky about it. I got into his drawer and poked a hole in all his little packages. Believe me when I say that I was all over him those next few weeks, just to make sure the plan worked. And wouldn't you believe it, my period was late the following month. When I took a pregnancy test, it was positive. I was so excited, so happy. It was the best day of my life. I rushed into the bedroom with a test in my hands and told him the great news. Well, that's when things got bad. Kyle wasn't happy. He was shocked and looked terrified. I tried to calm him down, telling him everything was going to be all right, that we could finally be this big, happy family. But he looked pale and weak. He couldn't even seem to speak. He didn't understand how it could possibly have happened. I couldn't tell him what I'd done, but that didn't matter. I explained to him that I was keeping my baby, our baby, and that he needed to buckle down and stop partying right away. He had to make sure everything was okay in our lives when the baby arrived. Oh, believe me, that was when he freaked out for real. He refused to do anything of the sort, and we began arguing. He kept telling me he didn't want to be a father and that I needed to solve this problem. I told him I was going to keep our child no matter what. Suddenly, Kyle turned around and stormed away from me. I tried to get him to stay, but he just got in his car and drove off. I was devastated. Honestly, I thought that my boyfriend would step up to the plate and be responsible for his new family, but instead, he simply ran away. I went back into my apartment, asking myself how I'd take care of a baby all on my own, and what my family would say. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I tossed and turned in bed, asking myself if Kyle was really going to abandon me and the baby. I was so worried and couldn't stop crying. I began to wonder if my plan had backfired, and would I have to face the music all on my own? The next morning, though, I heard someone walking into the apartment I shared with my boyfriend. It was Kyle, looking guilty and exhausted. I walked up to him and he hugged me so tightly and kissed me like he hadn't seen me in years. Kyle apologized for his reaction and explained that he just freaked out. He had talked to his parents during the night and realized that he needed to man up and take responsibility for his baby. I was so happy. I forgave him immediately, of course, and things seemed to go back to normal. Kyle really matured through my pregnancy and went back to being a great student. He asked me to marry him soon after, and we were husband and wife by the time our baby girl, Tilda, arrived into our lives. We couldn't be happier. See? Everything turned out for the better. I baby-trapped my boyfriend, but I did it with only the best of intentions. Thanks for watching. Do you think the end sometimes justifies the means? Have you ever done anything sort of messed up to make sure your partner didn't make a bad decision? Let us know in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel. I saw him at my school for the first time. I had never seen him there before. I'm Mila, by the way, and I'm 17. My friend Layla told me that he transferred from another city and that his name was Liam. I was head over heels for him since that very moment that I saw him. He had a sweet smile that brightened up everything around him. His hair was amazing, and his dressing style was unique. I was so attracted to him that all my friends knew I had a crush on him just by looking at the way I looked at him. I would blush at every glance I took of him, but I was too afraid to confess my feelings. He wouldn't even look at me. On the weekend, Layla was having a pool party at her house while her parents were away. I begged her to invite Liam too. Please, Layla, I really like this guy. Send him an invite, I begged. Okay, I'll only invite him if you promise me you'll tell him how you feel, she said. I agreed and promised that I would tell him. But before we move on, like this video, hit that subscribe button, and activate the notification bell. This will let you live 20 amazing years longer. Trust me, it works. The day of the pool party arrived. I went to my closet, grabbed my favorite swimsuit, and put it on. I wanted to look the best. Most importantly, I wanted Liam to notice me. I ran down the stairs out of the house and into my car and took off to Layla's house. When I reached Layla's house, I was pretty early, so we prepared some snacks for the party, some nachos, sandwiches, and drinks in her kitchen. The day was sunny, perfect for a pool party. One by one, friends started coming in through the front door. I said hi to everyone and showed them where the drinks were. No matter who I talked to, I kept on looking at the entry, wondering when Liam would arrive. I talked to a few friends, but I was getting a little sad because Liam didn't come, so I didn't want to stay anymore either. But right then, Liam entered with a few of his friends around him. That brightened my mood instantly. I started getting butterflies. I was a little nervous, excited, and very happy that he was there. I was starting to get cautious of my actions, monitoring how I walked or laughed. Suddenly, Layla came inside, grabbed my arm, and pulled me near the pool where a few people were dancing, and we both started to dance. While we were dancing, Layla held my hand and talked in my ear since the music was loud. So, did you talk to Liam? No, I haven't got a chance, I said. It's now or never, Mila, she said and gave me a soft push. Literally, I started falling backwards and bumped into someone. It was Liam. He caught me and our eyes met for a half second. But then we both started to lose our balance and then splash! We both fell in the pool. Everyone around us started laughing. I turned red. I looked at him and he was also blushing. We looked at each other and started laughing. "I'm Liam," he said. I already knew that, but I tried acting as if it was the first time I ever heard it. "Hi, Liam. I'm Mila," I said. We then got out of the pool and went to the lawn to dry off. We chose a corner which was not crowded so that we could talk. We talked about so many things. Well, he talked mostly, and I just looked at him. He was so dreamy and hot. He told me that he had moved from another city because of his dad's job. He told me how everything was so new to him, and I was the first girl he talked to here. I was beyond happy hearing what he was saying. Does he like me too? I thought. This was the chance to know. So I gathered the confidence I needed and said, "Liam, I really like you. I like you. Do you think that maybe we could go out sometime?" He looked confused and didn't say a word. I started getting anxious. After some moments of pause, he started to speak. "Look, Mila, you look like a nice girl, but I'm new here. Everything here is new for me, and I don't want to rush anything." My eyes started to become teary, but he kept on speaking. "I thought maybe we could be friends, but if you want something more, maybe we shouldn't talk at all." Then he left, and a tear rolled down my cheek. I couldn't believe that he had rejected me. I had never been rejected before, not only by a guy, but in general. My dad fulfilled all my wishes. He would get me anything that I asked for within hours. I was not used to hearing no. I couldn't stay there any longer. My vision was getting blurry as tears were filling my eyes. I didn't say a word to anyone, not even Layla. I walked back inside, wiped the tears off my eyes, grabbed my things and keys, got out, got into my car, and headed home. As soon as I reached home, I stormed off to my room without talking to my parents. I lied on my bed crying, and I couldn't stop. I didn't even go downstairs to get dinner with the family. After some time, there was a knock on my door. "Sweetheart?" It was Dad. "Dad, I don't want to talk right now," I replied. My voice was different because I had cried so much. "I am coming in. I know something's not all right. I cannot see you like this," he said, and then he opened the door and came in. I was still crying and my eyes were puffy. I could see the concern on my dad's face. "What happened, sweetheart? Who made you cry?" he said. "It's nothing," I said. "Tell me, I will make everything all right," he insisted. So I told him every detail of what happened. He hugged me and said, "Don't cry now. Rest. I'll handle it." After that, I felt a little better and went to sleep. The next morning, I got out of bed real early and went to the community center I used to volunteer at to get my mind off of things. I returned home with a fresh mind, but as I was about to park my car in front of the house, I saw a car in the driveway I had never seen before. I got out of my car and looked through the front window of my house and saw some people inside. There were some big men all dressed in black, and they had guns. And they were all gathered around what looked like Liam. I looked a bit closer, and it was Liam, and my dad was there too. Did Dad kidnap my crush? I got uncomfortable just thinking about it. So I turned around, ran back to my car, and I drove off. It started getting darker, so I came back home thinking it must all be over now. And it was. I walked inside, and everything was normal around the house. My dad was sitting on the couch watching TV, so I just said hello and went upstairs to my room. I had so many questions about all that I saw during the day, but I was too afraid to ask. The next day, I had to go to school. I was thinking about how I would face Layla and even Liam if we crossed paths. I was worried out of words. I drove to school, parked my car, and started walking towards class. To my surprise, Liam came running behind, calling my name. "Hey, Mila, what's up?" I was confused. I thought he said he didn't want anything to do with me. Did what I saw the other day change his mind? I thought. He came near me and smiled. "I thought about what you said, and I think I really like you too. How about we go out after school today?" he said. I didn't see that coming at all. I couldn't believe what he just said. But as soon as I started to realize, I felt happy. I didn't even care at that point what might have caused this change of heart. I smiled and replied, "Sure, that sounds good." Then we headed off to our respective classes. After the classes ended, we met in the hallway and walked to my car in the school's parking lot. We got in my car and drove off to a park. Both of us were really hungry and spotted a taco stand in the park. We got some tacos from the stand and sat down on the grass eating our food. It was like a little picnic, so romantic. It was just a dream, like something out of a fairy tale. We talked for hours. He looked so smitten with me. That was a huge change, but I was enjoying it. It started getting dark, so we packed everything up. headed back to my car, and drove to my house. I was about to go in, and it was getting darker, so I wanted him to get home too. I gave him a small kiss on his cheek. We both blushed. But then he said, "You want me to go home this soon? Wouldn't you invite me in?" "No, it's getting darker, so I'd rather you reach home too," I said. However, he was insistent on coming in. My parents weren't home, so I thought it would be fine. We both went in. Inside, he started walking around like he was looking for something. "Are you looking for anything?" I asked. "No, I'm just admiring your beautiful house." "Can I have a soda?" he said. "Sure." I went to the kitchen to get a soda for us. As I returned, I saw Liam was walking out of my father's home office. "Hey, did you go in there? My dad doesn't even let me enter there," I said. "Thank God he's not here." He said, "No, I just got confused about the rooms. I'm sorry. I should get going. It's getting darker." He left. He didn't even notice I had the soda. It was strange, but I was busy remembering the better part of the day, about our date. I went to sleep. I was dreaming about Liam and me. We were on another date. We were holding hands and walking. It was a sweet dream, but it didn't last for long. I was woken up by a thud on our main door. "FBI, open up." It was already morning. I ran downstairs. My parents had opened the door. There were about 10 to 12 men dressed as police. They started searching each room and corner of our house. One of the FBI agents had a gun pointed towards my parents. They had their hands cuffed. I ran their way. "What's going on, Dad?" I asked him, almost crying. "Your parents are mobs. Your dad is the head of the gang," said the FBI agent. My dad shouted, "Leave her alone. She has no part in this. She is innocent." "We know." Liam entered. "Liam, your job here is done. You shouldn't be here," the FBI agent said. "I know, Dad. I just need to explain this to Mila," he said. That FBI agent was Liam's dad. It was an additional shock to whatever I had gone through that morning. "Mila, your dad is a bad person. He is a mob, but no one could catch him. There was not enough evidence to prove that he is a criminal," Liam said. I started crying. It was like the world had ended for me. Both my parents were in police custody for things I never knew they did. I looked at Liam and shouted at him, "You used me to destroy my life!" He said sorry. He said that none of the things he did was his intention. He explained that it was entirely his dad's idea, and it wouldn't have initiated if my dad hadn't kidnapped him and threatened him to date me. After the kidnapping, Liam's dad made a plan to gather evidence against my dad. He told Liam to get into my house, in my dad's office, and hide a camera there, which would broadcast to the FBI office. That was why he needed me, to get an entry into my house. The date and everything we did that day was just an act. He also told me that with the help of the hidden camera, they found out where my dad hid his guns and other illegal items and papers. After telling me all the details, he held my hands and said, "I'm sorry." "Stop the act," I said. "You used me and lied to me. First my dad and then you." I cried as I said, "I never want to see your face in my life. I don't want a love that is forced. Goodbye, Liam." I walked away from him without looking at his face. A policeman came and informed me that my next of kin, aka my grandparents, were informed and that they would come to pick me up soon. After some time, they arrived. I got in their car with my things, and I said goodbye to that place forever. Do your parents know about your crush? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other videos on the channel.
Ever watch one of those videos on YouTube where it starts off happy-go-lucky and then turns into a dark screamer video that makes you spill your pop and jump out of your chair? That's what this felt like, only I couldn't just click the X and exit the video. Let me start from the beginning, perhaps the first day I clicked on YouTube. I was 12 years old, and so was she. Miranda posted videos of herself singing original songs in her well-lit bedroom with a guitar that was almost too big for her, and I fell in love. I watched every single one of her videos, from the moment she first posted to the day she hit 1 million subscribers. I left comments on all of her videos under my YouTube username, Shapeshifter14. I wasn't really a shapeshifter, and 14 was my lucky number. I daydreamed about explaining that to Miranda when we met. In my head, we met at parties, on the street, or at a YouTube fan event. She would recognize me from my profile picture, and we would fall in love, and everything would be perfect. Real life didn't work that way, of course, and I was never one of those creepy kids who pretended she was my girlfriend or anything. One day, when I was 17, I noticed she hadn't posted a video for over 2 weeks. I wasn't like her. She normally posted 3 times a week, like clockwork. When I scanned the internet and her other fan pages, I was stunned to see that her parents had died in a car crash, and Miranda had gone to live with her aunt. There wasn't a lot of news of where she was or how she was doing, and I think the lack of news made it worse. I spent every waking moment thinking about her. I imagined what I would say to her if I saw her, or what I would write if I got her email address. I thought I had it all planned out until the day I saw her walking down the hallway of my school. Instead of saying one of the 10,000 things I had thought about, I slammed my locker door in shock right onto my fingers. I didn't even have time to call myself an idiot because it hurt so much that I instantly cried. Miranda was walking by me at the same time, and she turned her head to me in shock. "Are you all right?" she asked, as any decent human being would. "I'm Shapeshifter," was what came out of my idiot brain. She stared at me for a moment. "You're a shapeshifter?" she asked and took a tiny step back. No. I brought my probably crushed beyond repair fingers to my side. "I'm Shapeshifter 14. You're Miranda. You're here. What are you doing here? Oh my god, I think my finger's gonna fall off." She probably should have ran away, but instead she smiled. "Oh," she said, "you comment on my videos." "Yes." I almost melted into the floor in a puddle of goo. She knew who I was. "Yes, and you vanished and..." "Yeah." She looked away. "A few things happened in my life." "I'm so sorry," I said. I read all about it. "I read that you went to live with your aunt, but I didn't know where. It's okay." I didn't know whether she was truly okay or just putting on a mask, but it didn't matter. "I probably won't be here long, but school is important, so..." "Why won't you be here long?" I asked. She paused. "I don't know. My aunt is someone who's busy a lot. Kids aren't really her thing. She never wanted them." "But I bet you're awesome to live with," I blurted out. Oh my god, I'm such an idiot. I might as well slam my whole face into the locker. She still didn't run away. She actually smiled. "Thanks," she said. "What is your real name?" It was like a dream come true. We chatted until the bell rang for class, and then I stood there, dumbstruck, after she left. The rest of the day, I felt like I was walking on a cloud. I didn't really have any friends, but there I was, talking to Miranda. When I went home and told my parents about what had happened, they raised an eyebrow. "Is this real?" my mother asked me. I looked at her in shock. "Of course it's real," I said. "Miranda is really going to my school. I guess her aunt lives here." "So it's not just some fan fiction story you wrote?" she asked, and I gaped at her. "No," I cried, "she's real." My mom sipped her coffee as if she was used to dealing with her lunatic child. She probably was. Sometimes her looks annoyed me, but today I didn't care. "Can she come for supper?" I asked. My mom paused. "Tonight?" I asked. No, not tonight, but sometime," I said. "She's in a new town, her parents died, she doesn't sound like she's happy with her aunt, and she doesn't know anybody. I could ask her when she's free." "How about Tuesday?" Mom asked. She was looking at her phone, and I wondered if there was another crisis. My mom was a crisis worker, and it seemed like she was always running off to rescue some poor kid. I, however, was always left on my own. I didn't mind most of the time, but I'm sure my mother always rescuing someone else's kids had led me to using YouTube as a parenting device. "No, she can't come Tuesday," I said. "She edits on Tuesdays after school." "Okay," my mother said. "Whenever you want." "Awesome, I'll ask her tomorrow," I said. "Thanks, Mom." "Sure," she said. "Just, she is really at school, isn't she?" "Mom, I'm not hallucinating," I said. "She's real, I swear." Okay, my mom said, and shook her head as she got up. "I have to get ready for dinner. Your dad'll be home soon." "I'm going to go do my homework," I said, even though I was actually going to see if Miranda was registered on our in-school messenger system yet. I had been too much of an idiot to ask for her number, and I doubt she would have given it to me anyways. She wasn't on the school messenger, and she wasn't at school the next day either. I was starting to think that maybe I really did hallucinate her, until I came home from school, and she was sitting in my living room. All I needed was something to break my fingers in, and this could be a deja vu of our first meeting. She was sitting on the couch and looked a little pale. Her eyes were red, and I realized she'd been crying. "You live here?" she said to me in surprise. Yeah," I managed as I put my bag down. "Are you looking for me?" "Not specifically," she replied, and I felt like an idiot. Of course she wasn't looking for me. "Dean?" my mother said as she came into the room. She gave Miranda a blue mug of tea, and I realized what was happening. She only gave the kids that she rescued the blue mug. She said that the tea was calming. "You know Miranda too?" I asked my mother and put two and two together. "Oh," she said, "I guess so." Slowly, over the course of the evening, the whole story came out. Miranda really didn't get along with her aunt, and she had called the crisis line for help. I knew that this was a terrible situation, but I couldn't help but be overjoyed. Obviously, I didn't want Miranda to be upset, but the fact that she was sitting in my living room, revealing intimate things, and I could refill her tea mug was amazing. Eventually, my mother sorted it out, and she went back to her aunt's house. However, it was not the first time my mother went to get her. Each time we got a little closer. Each time we talked a little more, and each time we sat physically closer on the couch. Miranda was actually a pretty normal person, I realized. Yes, she had 1 million followers on YouTube, and the first time she did a live stream from my house, I almost died. She just used a blank wall because she happened to be there at the advertised time, but I still felt like it was my 15 minutes of fame. I thought about cropping the wall in her video and posting it on Facebook and saying it's mine, but I didn't really have any friends on Facebook anyway. When she wasn't crying on my couch or filming videos, Miranda seemed to want to explore the town. We went to the movies, we went on walks, we even put our arms around each other. The first time she touched me, I almost gasped. Maybe this was it. Maybe my life wasn't going to get any better than this. Maybe this is what I had endured for all of those years of being teased and for being her fan for. This was perfection. There was one night where she slept over because she had a particularly bad fight with her ex, and she stood in the hallway before bed with a smile on her face. "I had a really good day today," she said to me, and I nodded. "Yeah, me too," I said. There's something I have to talk to you about in the morning, though," she said, and I froze. "What?" I asked. "Is it bad?" "No," she said with a smile. "It's good. It's really good." I went into my room and almost jumped for joy. Life was perfect, and I decided to be brave for once in my life. I pulled up my Facebook profile, and I sent her a relationship request. She had given me her personal Facebook, and I felt so honored. Now I knew that nothing could possibly be better than accepting my request. I was sure she would, too. I was certain that that was what she wanted to talk to me about. We'd basically been on dates for months now, and she didn't hang out with anyone else. The next morning when I got up, the request was still pending, but I heard noises downstairs. Confused, I went downstairs to see that there was some guy in my kitchen that I didn't know, sitting beside Miranda. "Dean," Miranda said, "I'm so glad you're awake." My parents were there too, and everyone was beaming. What's going on?" I asked as I ran my hands through my hair. "Who are you?" "We have some good news," my mother said, and handed me the paperwork in her hands. "You know that things have been very difficult for Miranda, but we've decided, given that everyone gets along so well, we wanted to make it better." "Oh?" I asked, confused. I looked down at my paperwork, and my eyes nearly fell out of my head. "No!" My mother looked confused. "No?" she asked. "You can't." I could barely form words. "You can't adopt her. We're dating." Miranda made a noise, and I looked up at her. "Didn't you see my Facebook relationship request?" I asked her. She turned to the boy beside her. "I didn't," she said. "Dean, I want you to meet my boyfriend, Sam." Nice to meet you," Sam said. "It's been so long since I could see Miranda, but now that the situation is stable, I'm happy to come down. But, you're dating?" "No," Miranda said, and clung to Sam's arm. "Of course we're not. Dean's just funny like that. And, ew, now that we'll be step-siblings?" "What do you think, Dean?" my mother asked. So this is what broken dreams tasted like. "Gotta go," I said, and vanished from the kitchen. My brain was basically on autopilot as I went to my bedroom. Everything I ever wanted, gone. Was this because I didn't know how to operate a locker? I pulled out my phone and stared at it for a while. I'd spent years with Miranda just on this screen, and now that she was here, I felt like I lost her forever. I scrolled through YouTube mindlessly, my broken mind not even syncing with my potentially broken fingers. Eventually, I landed on Holly G, another YouTube singer who Miranda hated. Holly G always copied everything she did and managed to get just as many views. I paused and then hit the comments section. Shapeshifter14. "Hey, I'm your #1 fan." Time to start all over again.